The longer the brain's depressed, the longer it stays depressed, and the harder it is to get out of that. It's January 2021. The year 2020 splattered death and destruction throughout my life. My broken heart and soul showed up in the way my brain was functioning. Decreased energy, fleeting focus, and gloom just radiated from me. My friends and family noticed, and my doctor and friend offered me an antidepressant because I was so down. As a physician, I've seen mental illness for over 20 years, and it doesn't just show up in one day. But before I write a prescription for my patients, I check 3 things. I check what are the building blocks of neurotransmitters. I check the brain's fuel, and I check the brain's function. Without fixing the building blocks, the brain's fuel, and the brain's function, those prescription medications will not do their job. What do I mean by building blocks? Let's start with neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are these hormones or proteins throughout the brain that travel down axons and hop between synapses. They send messages throughout the brain. And when those neurotransmitters are in full force, the brain works beautifully. You'll find an abundant amount of neurotransmitters in healthy, nourished brains. In depressed brains, those neurotransmitters are in low supply or moving very slowly. If you're trying to improve the function of the brain, you must first make sure the supply of neurotransmitters is in full force. So how do you make a neurotransmitter? You need building blocks. One of those building blocks is iron. If you're anemic or low on iron, the brain is missing one of the ingredients to make a neurotransmitter. So when my doctor offered a prescription for depression, I knew first to check, am I anemic? And I wasn't. But the second building block that I check before writing a prescription for depression is vitamin D. Did you know that the further away you are from the equator, the harder your depression is to fix? Why is that? Well, we think it links to the low amounts of vitamin D circulating within the body and the brain. When vitamin D gets into the brain, it signals the brain to make the proteins of a neurotransmitter. And when I needed to know, was my brain low on vitamin D, I didn't go to my physician. If you want to see people that do not like going to the doctor, ask any doctor. So I ordered a home kit to see what's my vitamin D, and it was low. So as I worked on replacing my vitamin D, the next thing I did was I oversupplied the next building block to make a neurotransmitter, and that is magnesium. My favorite way to replace magnesium is a float. Yeah, a magnesium float is usually done in a dark room without any sound, and there's enough magnesium in the water that you float. So it's a time where I can slow down my brain, I can shut off the noise, and take a little vacation for 1 hour while replacing my magnesium. So the basic building blocks for neurotransmitters start with iron, vitamin D, and magnesium. And while I check those off of the list, the next thing I recommend for my patients is to check the way they fuel their brain. Yes, the cells in your brain use glucose, mostly coming from carbohydrates, and ketones, which come from fats. Glucose and ketones are both able to be used in brains, and it turns out that brains that are in a chronic state of depression are commonly using only one source of that fuel. They're using only glucose. So if a brain is only using glucose and it's depressed, how long will it take for that brain to start using ketones once they're around? Well, I thought it would take a long time. But this study shows that once ketones are in circulation, it took the brain only 4 days to not only learn how to use ketones, but to start to prefer ketones as its source of fuel. And indeed, when patients start to drink ketones, their mood lifts on about day 4, exactly when the study said the brain prefers ketones. So when my brain was acting gloomy, I added some vitamin D, went for some magnesium soaks, and started sipping on ketones. So once I had the building blocks replaced in my brain and I had the right fuel going in, I had to work on how to slow down my brain. You see, your brain makes these neurotransmitters when you sleep deeply. And during times of death and destruction, during times of a poor mood, our brain tends to wake up ruminating over our day. And I was suffering from that too. I just couldn't get it to shut off. So I had to do exactly what I tell my patients to do, which is detox from the distractions. Now, the first place I succeeded at this was actually when I went to one of those floats. That lack of sound and lack of sight and floating on the water was an incredible time for me to just practice slowing down my brain. And then I started being a little more intentional about how to take time to appreciate the things that were going well. I did just like I asked my patients to do and wrote in cursive handwriting in an actual notebook those things of gratitude. I added to that list every day. And sometimes it was very simple things. God, thank you for the breath in my lungs. And as the days went by, the sentences got a little longer and my sleep got deeper. With those habits in full supply, it didn't take long for my nights to begin at bedtime and sink all the way through the night, sleeping and restoring my brain's neurotransmitters. The other thing that was happening to my brain when I got that really good sleep is your brain will wash itself in that deep sleep. That washing cycle is also known to improve the chances that the depression won't come back. If you'd like to learn another trick about getting rid of depression, I'll teach you how to get rid of ants in your brain, those automatic negative thoughts. Check out this video.